So, the Template Institute has recently made a video discussing the existence or the perceived existence of female space marines. Now, this has been a very tired and worn out discussion made across the internet within the last few years. And the thing is, Template's position is a very common one that I've found all across media exploration. The idea that it is their experience rather than something found concretely within something like the lore or just logical explanations. And the point of this discussion video that I'm making now, off the cuff, not scripted, is to say that if nothing matters because it's all just an interpretation and an opinion of your experience of the thing, then what is even the point of maintaining any kind of lore? What is actually the point? Like, what is the purpose of the Horus Heresy novels if everything is up to interpretation? What is the point of the Space Hulk video game and its demonstration of Deathwing Terminators if everything is just up to interpretation? What is the point of saying definitively that the Gene Stealer cult is a cult of Gene Stealers if everything is just up to interpretation? And I can go on and on and on. And the problem with this line of thinking is that ultimately, if everything is just an interpretation, then what is even the point of engaging with the media at all? There's no way to compare or contrast somebody's takes if nobody can agree on a premise, on a setting, rules, and sequence of events. The thing is that the reason why there's so much pushback against the concept of female space marines is a few reasons. One, it simply is not in the lore. It is not something that's possible within the rules of the lore. First of all, space marines are not just generic super soldiers. They are in essentiality pseudo-clones, because that is how the gene seed works. They aren't just pumped full of chemicals and then turned into super soldiers. No, they have these organs that are cloned over and over and over again and are implanted into viable hosts. And then those gene seed implants then mutate the host's core function, bodily functions, and biological construction to mimic that of the Primarch from which these organs were originally derived from. That's why most Ultramarines tend to look like white blonde dudes, except with more recent additions to the lore. And that's also why most Salamanders tend to have that charcoal black skin. It's also why the Volca Fenrica look like Norse Viking spacemen. It is because the Primarchs of those respective legions looked that way. That is what they were and what they looked like and how they operated, and so the Space Marines are constructed to mimic that. And therefore, the reason for all the Space Marines being men is because all the Primarchs were men. And despite what the Temple Institute might want you to think about how advanced and awesome technology can be, to put very simply, human organ transplants are not and cannot be universal. There are simply too many minute differences between body to body that make things like blood transfusions and organ transplants very difficult. And so you put this into the context of the Space Marine gene seed implantation, and then you realize just how limiting this process actually is. And so for all the Primarchs to be male, that means you would most likely get a proper marrying of the gene seed with other male subjects. And even then, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of aspirants that do not survive the process. It is supposed to be that dangerous. That's why there are only ever so many Space Marines in existence, because of how difficult it is to create them. And it's not like this was always the case. During the Horus Heresy, there were literal legions of Space Marines, and that is because the gene seed cloning process had not degraded so definitively by the time that the 41st millennium has gotten to. That being said, For anybody to say that female Space Marines are totally possible because of a Rogue Trader fan article was written one point in time are just people looking for any kind of excuse to have their female Space Marines. Never mind that Sisters of Battle and the Sisters of Silence already exist. They are definitively different from Space Marines, making them unique, but they are your women in power armor, which makes them roughly equal, mostly equal, to the power and ability of the Space Marines, because unlike the Space Marines who are limited in the number that they can have, the Sisters of Battle have essentially no cap on how many there can be. There are literally millions of them in the galaxy, and so if you want your women in power armor, you've already got them. You're just being pedantic because you specifically want a female Volca Fenrica or a female Dark Angel. And the only thing I can say to that is you are trying to not add something to this setting. You are trying to exercise a form of control rather than adhere to the rules that are already set in the universe. And I can only assume that the Template Institute unfortunately falls into this category. They're using tired arguments that nobody has any sense in making, because if nothing matters, why bother? If nothing actually matters, if nothing is actually lore, then what is the point in even what's the point in even engaging with the setting then? If nothing really exists objectively, then what's the point? Why would anybody ever want to engage in this setting if nothing they are told is concrete, if everything is subject to change based on the interpretations of the individuals involved? That's just not how this stuff works. The point of the setting's popularity alone already is because there are set rules in place. Rogue Trader is not Warhammer 40k. It never was. It was definitely a starting point, but to say that Rogue Trader and Warhammer 40k in its existence now are somehow intrinsically tied to each other is just a little bit silly to say. That being said, I do think that the Template Institute can make some really good videos, and in recent history I have rewatched a lot of their videos. They're good videos. I like their takes on theoretical futurism, but this feels more like an individual within the Template Institute who probably has far more power and control within the channel than is probably, necessary, and are just spewing out their nonsense because they have some kind of desire to exercise a level of control over an IP that has, for a very long time, established and maintained a proper setting. A setting that is grimdark, a setting that is not like our modern world, and it is a setting where the running joke is, oh, I would love to live in my favorite universe, but when you ask a 40k fan, no, I do not want to live in that universe. That place is literal hell. But we love to play it anyway because we love the stories and the characters involved, be they a male Space Marine or a female Sisters of Battle, or even the many, many female Imperial Guardsmen that we get to interact with, be it through the video games, or through the books, or just your own made-up characters on the tabletop. So what I'm trying to say is, anybody that tells you that female Space Marines are totally a thing, they're not trying to add to the setting. They aren't trying to enrich the lore of Warhammer. They just want to exercise some level of control so that they can feel empowered, so that they can feel like, yeah, I made that happen. Why did I make that happen? I don't know. I don't care. I made it happen. And that's just the unfortunate thing. Don't believe these people. They don't actually care about your thoughts or feelings on the matter. They just want to spew their nonsense and believe that they are in control. That's all I have to say. God Emperor bless. Goodbye.